Hey everyone, welcome back to New Slang. I'm music journalist Thomas Mooney. This is episode 157, and for today's episode, I am joined by songwriter Ben Nichols of the one and only Lucero. So Lucero has this new album coming out tomorrow. That would be Friday, January 29th. It is called When You Found Me. I was thinking about this earlier. I feel that Lucero kind of gets typecast or pigeonholed as a band as kind of only being this like rough and tumble alt country band who only sings about drinking and bars and heartache and heartbreak. And yeah, there's undoubtedly been a lot of that over the years. It's probably why you fell in love with Lucero in the first place. I know it was for me, but it's really interesting to see just how much Ben and the band have progressed over the years, both in a sonic way and in their storytelling. These past few albums have really been one of my favorite iterations of the band. And as much as I love Tennessee and That Much Further West and that era of the band, I really love this expanding sonic palette of Among the Ghosts and this new album. There's this really nice atmospheric touch that's happening throughout both records that really plays well with the storytelling. We speak a lot about that storytelling and those cinematic tones on here. I won't rehash and spoil all the topic points in this intro here, so we'll start with the actual interview here in like 2 seconds. Before we do though, let's state the obvious. If you haven't subscribed to New Slang just yet, go ahead and do so. Give the podcast a 5-star review over on iTunes. Be sure to check out the New Slang merch store and the Patreon. I actually just threw everything on sale in the merch store too. That's t-shirts, koozies, magnets, stickers, and New Slang monthly postcard prints. They're all on sale. Yeah, let's do that thing where you buy things on the internet and I'll send them to you in the mail. I'll throw all the vital links into the show notes. Today's presenting partner is our pals over at Desert Door Texas Soto. If you're asking yourself what exactly Desert Door or a Soto is, well, it's a premium, high-quality spirit that is similar to a tequila or a mezcal, but in my estimation, it's more refined, smooth, and fragrant. It has a distinct and intriguing palate that picks up on hints of vanilla and citrus while maintaining a healthy earthiness that is quite enjoyable. One of my favorite features about Desert Door is just how versatile it really is. If you want to feel fancy and a little highbrow, it's perfect for a variety of cocktails that call for lime wedges and coarse salt, chopped ginger, agave nectar, sprigs of thyme and sticks of cinnamon. If you're down to muddle some fresh fruit, all that kind of stuff, it's perfect. It's great for experimentation and fine-tuning all of your mixologist skills. And then also, if you're a little bit more down home and casual, you got that denim jacket on. It's just perfect for those short and sweet, simple go-to favorites that hit the mark every time. I'm talking about ranch waters and Moscow mules and palomas and Mexican Coca-Cola with Desert Door. What I love so much about Desert Door is just how genuine and authentically West Texan they are as well. They go out and harvest Soto plants out in the wild and are aware and knowledgeable conservationists at heart. So next time you're at your neighborhood liquor store, get yourself a bottle of Desert Door. I'll throw a link into the show notes for more information. All right, let's get into the actual interview. Here is Ben Nichols of Lucero. Yeah, well, I guess like where I want to start out with is like, obviously you have this new record, When You Found Me, coming out, and it is that 10th studio record, and not necessarily one of those things where I guess like you are constantly looking back at your career as a whole, but you know, 10 is like a pretty big number as far as a time that you could reflect on. Has there been much reflection on like, you know, you guys made it to 10 studio records? That's an accomplishment, you know?
You know, it never really crossed our mind. It was just the next record to make. And I guess if you count the Attic tapes, that was just recorded on a cassette 8-track Tascam up in my guitar player's dad's attic. With that record, we've got 11. So, but I guess you're right, studio albums, though. This is the 10th one. But no, we just, we were kind of expanding on on the things we've done on the last record, Among the Ghosts. I think that was my favorite album that Lucero's done so far, just overall. I think it's got a nice balance and consistency to it. And just like everything we've learned over the last 20 some odd years of making albums, I think it kind of comes together the best. The songwriting, the playing, the mixing. I think it all kind of comes together the best on Among the Ghosts. So we really just wanted to kind of expand on what we did with that record, which is exactly what When You Found Me does. It's got a little bit of the same kind of mood and tone, which is a little bit darker, a little bit, I don't know, meaner or melancholy maybe, some combination of all that stuff, with a few new sounds on it, some different kinds of keyboards and synthesizers that we hadn't really used much in the past. And so we kind of pushed that stuff a little bit further this time. But no, as far as the significance of the number 10, no, we were kind of too busy to really think about it too much, I guess.
Yeah, you mentioned like those synth sounds. There was some real good hints at that during Among the Ghosts. You guys started putting a little bit more of that texture, that ambiance, that atmospheric element. And of course, like during this, it's obviously like that next step, that next progression, that evolution. I really love, obviously, when a band isn't like afraid to just continue to, progress. And you're not trying to make that first record 10 times.
Yeah, that would be some version of hell for me if I had to remake Self-Titled or Tennessee over and over again. This is Among the Ghosts, the last record. We did use some Mellotron, and maybe a Moog or something is buried in there somewhere. But it was pretty subtle. Here, the synthesizers and the Mellotron stick out. Are on top a little bit more. And that was just, I don't know. Yeah, it was a fun kind of logical direction to go at the moment. We've had weird stuff on records ever since Tennessee. There's drum machines on a few of those early records, and some experimental just effects and things here and there. But yeah, letting the synths really kind of carry the songs. And some of these songs were actually written on the keyboard. I don't do that very often, but these songs they started off, some of them, as just pieces I was working on for my little brother, Jeff Nichols, and possibly he's a filmmaker, and I was thinking maybe he could use some of this stuff for soundtrack types things. And so they kind of started off in this kind of synth cinematic kind of space. And then it came time to make a new Lucero record. And so some of these pieces kind of evolved into Lucero songs. So the kind of keyboard synthesizer element was kind of baked into them from the very beginning. And we just kind of ran with it.
Yeah, I've always really loved that kind of that atmospheric, I guess, like element of a record when it comes to the synth and like just the, as you put it, like the cinematic kind of stuff. It's just like adds another texture, another layer that you just feel like that world that's been created in this song or in this record is just a little bit more real and a little bit more rooted in I don't know, like it just feels more real in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm a sucker for that, for creating that atmosphere. And I really like songs. It sounds cheesy, but songs that make you feel like you're in a movie, songs that kind of are your own personal soundtrack and make you feel, whatever, like make you feel tougher than you actually are, make you feel, more important than you actually are, just that take you someplace else and kind of make you someone else. I don't know. And songs like that sometimes have that kind of cinematic atmosphere to them. I don't know. It's something that's always struck me and that I've always liked. And so it's cool to work that into the Lucero record.
Yeah, I think that like people love that thing because you can relate it to when you're like driving, right? Like on a
Yeah,
if you have like there's a reason why you have the radio on, and it's not just to fill up
exactly.
noise, or like it's why people when they're working out they have like that high energy mix, whatever the case is.
Right. Yeah. I guess that's a good example as well. But those driving songs. There's a reason why you're not listening to talk radio. You're listening to the music because you're kind of in that moment, and it's kind of your own personal soundtrack, movie soundtrack, and I've always that's kind of how I've always listened to music.
Yeah, one of the things that I feel like this record has done to also kind of like challenge that palette for me is I think like a lot of people when they think of like that synth and I guess in relationship to like rock and roll, you think of more of the like the Springsteen Born in the USA kind of stuff, right? Like the real like wide openness. And
right.
There's certainly some of that on this record, but I also think like it's made me realize, like this stuff really works well for, more of a Southern Gothic feel and more of a Southern Gothic, I guess, like
I'll buy
range,
that. Yeah, no, I'll buy that. I've always been inspired by the classic rock I kind of grew up on in the 80s. And, the tasteful stuff is the Bruce Springsteen and the Tom Petty. And, those are the things that you're allowed to like. But I like the cheesy stuff too. I like the Foreigner and the Journey. I appreciate those a lot as well. And so that radio, the 80s kind of radio sound was definitely an influence on this record. But I kind of forget how ingrained I am with the kind of alternative music of that era as well. So in the 80s, you also had stuff like The Cure, and I don't know, that kind of darker indie rock kind of stuff that had a lot of these sounds on it as well. And so songs like, it hasn't been released yet, but when the record comes out, folks will hear Pull Me Close, Don't Let Go, which I think has some of that more underground element from that era. The synths can take you two different directions, kind of to the more stadium rock stuff or to the kind of underground sound. And I don't know, both of them are kind of tied up and wound together all throughout this record.
Yeah, I always I think like for, I was born like in 87. So I think whenever like you grew up around, right, in that teenage years, you always just kind of think of like what was right before it is kind of like maybe like the worst music ever or something because it's your parents' music essentially.
You've got to rebel. You've got to rebel some.
And, it's been just in these last few years that I've really gone back and like, man, the 80s are so underrated when it comes to having like the pop sensibility of a lot, like as you mentioned, like The Cure, like a lot of these like more indie rock, college rock bands, like they were still being played on the radio, even if it wasn't a college city setting, and there's just so many more, there's a lot more diverse sounds than I think you kind of like, I guess it's just more generalized as like one sound, but there's a lot of diversity as far as like the kind of sounds.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't know, luckily my keyboard player, Rick Steff, he's got this awesome collection of kind of vintage synths and analog synths and as well as new stuff. He's got an amazing collection of keyboards. And so he knows kind of what to tap into and which direction might be most applicable. So he brought in a whole bunch of things and we just kind of played around with stuff. And it was kind of fun experimenting with those sounds and that variety and diversity of sounds. But yeah, when you get it all on there and kind of mix it all together and boil it all down, I think we did a pretty good job of still making a Lucero record, I think it still sounds like us.
Yeah, most definitely. And, I really obviously have loved just kind of like you guys venturing, or yourself specifically, venturing more into those third person narratives, those vignettes. And
Oh, yeah.
I mean, like, I think you've really been doing a lot of your best storytelling these past few records in that capacity.
Thank you. It's something I've been consciously working on. A lot of those earlier Lucero songs were definitely just kind of first person, what was going on in my life, pretty straightforward, almost like diary entries, which those can be all right sometimes. But just as a songwriter, I don't know, thinking more about the craft of songwriting and storytelling, I don't know, I think it's rewarding to kind of push beyond that. And it's not something that came naturally to me. We've had songs in the past like The War, which was about my granddad in Europe in World War II, and The Bike Riders, which was based on a book of photographs and interviews. I've tried these kind of third-person storytelling things before, and I think I'm starting to get a little bit better at them. It's always tricky finding other folks' stories to tell. But yeah, there's a few of those on this record. I don't know, back in Ohio is kind of the main example. The story of this guy, William Morgan, is a true story of a guy from Ohio who went down and ended up fighting in the Cuban Revolution with pro-democracy rebels. And then when Castro took over and hooked up with the communists, Billy Morgan ended up in front of a firing squad. But his whole life story was very interesting, and I feel bad. I kind of just scratched the surface of his story and kind of made this throwback rock and roll song. I turned his whole life into just rock and roll lyrics, and I feel a little bad about shortchanging him because his life was so interesting. But the song functions as I intended it to. I wanted something kind of like Warren Zevon's Lawyers, Guns, and Money, or Rolling the Headless Thompson Gunner or something. That's kind of what I was shooting for. But the more I've learned about William Morgan, the more he's got. You could write a whole concept album about his life. But then there's also stories about there's another Granddad song on there called Coffin Nails.
Right.
And then Outrun the Moon, the first single that we released. It's a little more vague, but it kind of started off as a murder ballad, or maybe there's a murder, maybe not. I don't know. It's hard to tell exactly what happens in the song. In my mind, it's some kind of, I don't know, revenge song that happens in rural Arkansas off of Interstate 40, concerning a young girl and her stepdad. But yeah, I like that I left it fairly vague. Although with the video that we did a lyric video, and I illustrated and animated some of these images that I had in my head that kind of went along with the song. And so that actually, once I did those illustrations and animated this video, that made the lyrics a little more concrete. It kind of gave you more of a clue of what I was thinking when I was singing those words. But yeah, that's definitely a story song that's not about me and not directly out of my life. Although it might have been inspired by my little girl Izzy, with her around, hanging out with a little girl all the time. I don't know. I think subconsciously I might be more inclined to write songs from a young girl's perspective, which is brand new for me. I've never done that really before at all. So yeah, having kind of a young girl as the heroine or main character of your story in the song is something I might do more of that too in the future. We'll see.
This episode of New Slang is brought to you by Hot Damn Coffee. Rolling in from the hills of eastern Tennessee is Hot Damn Coffee. It's a down-home company that roasts single-origin, high-quality coffees from around the world. Their year-round roasts come from certified farms in Ethiopia, Tanzania, and Nicaragua. Check out the Hot Damn website over at hotdamn.co. hotheam.coffee. There you can find more info on their operation and roasting process and some helpful tips on how to brew the best cup of coffee. They've certainly made my mornings that much better. And to be perfectly honest, I enjoy a nice cup of coffee at all hours of the day. Some of my favorites have been the Tanzanian pea berry in medium roast and the medium roast of Nicaraguan with the honey process. While there, check out their Hot Damn Coffee Club, which is a monthly subscription service. With the holiday season coming upon us, it's just really kind of the perfect gift. I don't care how difficult or easy a person is to shop for, they'll always be good with items like high quality coffee. And of course, right now, if you throw in the promo code SLANG in all caps, that's SLANG, you'll get 20% off your order. And if you're signing up for the Coffee Club subscription service, they'll take 20% off that first month and also throw in a bonus 8-ounce bag of their Nicaraguan coffee. Again, that's SLANG in all caps. Head over to hotdamn.coffee and sign up today. All right, let's get back to the episode. Yeah. I think I can speak for a lot of people around my age, and I know especially like my friends, those early Lucero records, that was like the soundtrack of our 20s. And, you kind of always think like, oh, these songs right here, this is what it's like to be in your 20s and to be, I guess a little bit more ragtag, a little bit more going to the bar
For sure.
night kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, no, of course. That's my whole point on it is like, that really fit and personifies a lot of people's lives for hopefully like, not their entire lives, for a period, right? And
I think that's, and that's what that last song, When You Found Me, kind of addresses that fact. It kind of addresses the fact that maybe had spent too long in that, part of my life. That part of my life it kind of dragged out as far as it could, as far as I could push it, and that getting older and actually transitioning into, I don't know, more of a family life with my own family, that kind of saved me. And so this whole new perspective, that transition from one way of living to another, I guess there's some of that on this record as well. I hadn't really thought of that much before, but yeah, the songwriting has changed a little bit and the perspective has changed a little bit. And, as my life has changed.
Yeah. Well, I find it really interesting that you say, that the third person stuff, the more storytelling, aspects, those songs, it wasn't like a natural fit, you had to work on it. And I think that like, a lot of times people think, oh yeah, you're a songwriter, storytelling is just going to be natural just because
right.
it's a God-given talent, if you will, or something like that. But a lot of times it's the patience and the work ethic and the I guess like finding those stories, obviously,
right. Yeah maybe for some people it's God-given, but I think the folks that are really good at it, your Bruce Springsteens, your Tom Waits folks, and I don't know, Randy Newmans and people like that, that can weave these stories. I have a feeling they've put a lot of time and effort and work in, and just observation, just gathering these ideas and these characters. I don't know. That's something I wish I was better at, but I'm trying to get better at it. But I think that's something that these guys do so well is, they just collect these characters. And that's something I'm working towards.
Yeah. Well, I'm assuming that like part of what comes natural is the narrative part, but what's maybe the challenge is the challenge like stepping away from yourself and like trying to think from a different perspective. Is that where like the real challenge is? Or
I think the real challenge is actually finding where to put yourself into the story. Because it's really easy to tell somebody else's story and you've got all the facts and you've got, the character and the situation, but it doesn't quite ring true. There's a certain heart to it maybe that's missing, or there's something that's missing. And so really the tricky part is finding a way to make that story your own in a way, and putting whatever drew you to the story in the first place, or whatever, really stuck with you, or, whatever you found intriguing about it or emotional about it, and trying to translate that, inject that into the story. I think that's kind of the tricky part. The heartfelt stuff is obvious when you're writing about, the girl that won't answer your phone calls, or the loss in your own life. That stuff can come through pretty easily. But trying to take a story that has touched you in that way and then retell it so that it makes that same connection with a listener. That's the magic part. That's the tricky part right there.
Yeah. You a minute ago mentioned Coffin Nails. That's one of the songs that just keeps on, like, I find myself just going back to that song.
Oh, thank you. That's one of my favorites on the record.
Yeah, well, you have that Tim O'Brien reference in there.
Yeah, The Things They Carried. I read that book in college, and it's stuck with me. I've reread it numerous times. A book of short stories, all based on his experience, the author's experience in Vietnam. And that the first story in the book is titled The Things They Carried. And that was the first story of his he read. And a lot of it is, literally lists of things they carried and how much they weighed, ounce by ounce. And I don't know, just the way he wove that into a very heartbreaking story. It made a big impression on me. And so, I don't know, I've sung a little bit in the past about my granddad and him being a veteran. I don't know. So that's always been something I've been interested in. And this song's kind of, I don't know, it's about fathers and sons. It mentions my great-grandfather's name was John Rufus. And that just happened to fit into the song. I wasn't planning on writing a song about my great-grandfather, but I needed a name, and his name happened to fit. And then that kind of led to writing the rest of it. But I don't know. It's the Tim O'Brien reference seemed to work with a song about guys that had been in World War I and World War II as well.
Yeah. Well, you have that line that's kind of really the I guess, like, the turn of the song, though. The big chorus punch is like, I weigh my deeds on my father's scales. When did that kind of, like, come into the picture for the song, as far as, like, was it kind of like a light bulb going off?
Yeah, that was one of those lines where I got lucky. And like I said, I started with with that idea of something from the dark coming down and landing on the windowsill and crying all night, like the banshee. When someone's about to die, the banshee comes by the house. You can hear the banshee howling or whatever. That was kind of the original spark of the song. And then so I needed a name. I needed somebody to be dying, and kind of stumbled across my great granddad's name. And so that was where the song started. And then as I was just singing through and I got to that chord change for the chorus, that's just the line about, weighing yourself on your father's scales. That's one of those lines that was just kind of floating out there. And I was lucky enough to kind of grab it as it was floating by. It just kind of popped into my head. And those are those kind of lines where you don't really feel like you wrote them. You feel like they were there already, and you just happen to grab it out of the sky. So, and then that kind of really made everything, the whole song kind of click together. It was kind of a complete circle then. So, that's what you're aiming for as a songwriter, is to find all the pieces and make them fit together in the right way. And it's rare. You hope to have a few of those on an album. And so, if you can get just one that really works like that, you feel pretty good.
Yeah, like that just, obviously you mentioned, the song about this is a song about fathers and sons, and like just that line right there just has really resonated with me because like I feel like your entire life just you're always kind of like measuring yourself against those who come before you.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a very common uh, feeling among everybody. And I'd always heard stories about my granddad and yeah, the interdependency of I don't know, the issues he had with his father that then led to, the issues that my dad had with my granddad. And yeah, how these things kind of compound over time and are passed down from one generation to the next. Yeah, it seems like kind of a continuous thing that I figure lots of folks can relate to.
Want to break one more time to talk about our pals over at Desert Door and offer a handful of my favorite go-tos. By no means am I an experienced mixologist or bartender or anything like that, but these have been super easy to make and great ways to unwind in the evening. Let's start off by upping your ranch water game a little bit by subbing Desert Door in. I'm a simple man. I just kind of take a Topo Chico, take a couple of drinks out, add some Desert Door, and top it off with a few lime wedges. I'm actually pretty big on the Palomas now too. What I'll do is take some Desert Door, some grapefruit juice, a dash of agave nectar, and some fresh lime juice. And I'm kind of big on lime, so I'll throw in another wedge or two when I pour it over some ice. And actually, I'll do the exact same thing, but I'll substitute some pineapple for the grapefruit for a change up. And now that the weather is dipping down, I've started having a Desert Door version of a hot toddy. Put some Door and some honey together and give it a mix. Add in an Earl Grey tea bag with some boiling hot water. Let it just sit for a minute. Remember, patience is a virtue. And then of course, I'll squeeze in a little bit of lemon just to have that balance. Anyway, Desert Door, it's as versatile as vodka and more refined, smooth, and complex than tequila. It's rich and balanced, so whatever your go-to is, it'll do the trick. For more info on Desert Door, check the show notes. All right, back to the episode. Yeah, so obviously we've talked a little bit about Tim O'Brien there. Last time I interviewed you, I guess, around Among the Ghosts, and you had also mentioned, like Larry Brown. And,
yeah,
like after doing that interview, like I had to go out and get, Big Bad Love. And
Big Bad Love is great, yeah.
Yeah, well, is there any more? I know, like, it was kind of more of a touchstone for the last record, as far as like you being, really talking about a lot of these, I guess what we will call them like modern Southern Gothic writers.
Right.
Right. Is it been more? Have you still been pulling from these guys for this?
Man, I haven't added. My reading has changed. I'm not sure what I'm reading nowadays. But all those writers that I was reading at the time, Ron Rash and Larry Brown, and Tim O'Brien. He's not really Southern, but he fits in with these short story writers. Harry Cruz, some other guys. That stuff has, even though I'm not reading their stories right now, it's all kind of in there. It's all in my brain, and I find myself going back to that kind of stuff quite a bit whenever I'm writing. That stuff is kind of always there. And so yeah, I guess on this new record, on When You Found Me, Larry Brown kind of pops up with he's got a book called Faye that's about a young girl on the run, kind of out on her own in Mississippi. And that's kind of the type of character I had in mind when I wrote Outrun the Moon, which is about a young girl as well. So yeah, the Larry Brown reference it's not really a reference. It's not as specific. It's more just the inspiration is there. Yeah. But like I said, it's that stuff. I like it so much. It made such a big impression on me that all that stuff is always there.
Yeah. Were you, are you a fan of like the Charles Portis?
He's Arkansas guy.
Yeah. Well, I guess, the Arkansas tie there.
Yeah. An Arkansas author. And yeah, True Grit, of course, was a book of his. And yeah, I haven't read a lot of his stuff, unfortunately. I should read more. But yeah, I have a feeling I've always known about him, but I've just one of those things that's on your radar and just kind of slips by. Of course, I'm a fan of both True Grit movies, but yeah, I need to put him on my list of stuff to read again. I have a feeling it would all be right up my alley.
Yeah, there's this podcast I listen to that's kind of about media, and it's called The Press Box, and like they'll talk about books that you should be reading, yada yada yada, and it's one of those things like drink every time they mention Dog of the South by Charles Pace, because like it's gonna come like every episode basically.
Man, I started that book and never. I just put it down and didn't pick it back up. I need to get back into it and finish that one. I'll put that on my list of things to do.
Yeah, what's been interesting has been, so I'll backtrack a little bit. I'm gonna cut this little bit out because I know what I'm gonna say, but I'm rambling on here.
It's all good. I do the same thing.
It's been really interesting because this past year, obviously, with the pandemic, most of these songwriters and artists that I've talked with, their records have all been at least recorded pre-pandemic, and it was the release of their record during this time.
Right.
Y'all's record, though, I'm starting to talk with people more and more who recorded sometime within this past year. And of course, that's all these other extra elements of precaution
right.
that have been taken into account. And obviously you guys recorded this in Memphis, and, masks and quarantine and all the stuff that you would expect. When it comes to like the actual, like the collaborative aspect of this record, before you even step into the studio, what was that like as far as like sharing ideas and sharing songs and like, the demo process and everything?
Right. Yeah. The writing process for this record was drastically different than anything we've done in the past, just because of the lockdowns. Usually leading up to a record or recording a record, we do a lot of rehearsal together, and I've usually got a fairly solid idea of what the songs are when I bring them to the band. I usually have at least a verse and a chorus, and I know the vocal pattern that I'm going to put on top of it, even if I don't have the lyrics. But I'll usually take that to the guys, and then we'll flesh it out and build it up from there. In this case, though, with this record, we got done with tour in March, and we planned on going into the studio, April or May, maybe. And so, in normal times, we would have come home from tour and basically started rehearsing and writing. But this time we went right into lockdown. And so I just went into my basement and started working on these demos, and I was adding, drum machines and more keyboards and extra guitars, and I was really fleshing them out, mainly just because I had the time to work on them. So then, recording gets postponed to midsummer. I believe we were in there at the beginning of July, just because we were waiting for the COVID numbers to go down to where we at least felt like, I don't know, it was at least it wasn't too risky. But yeah, so I emailed the guys these demos, and everybody kind of learned their parts on their own. And that was that's not how we've done things in the past. So when we got into the studio, it was definitely more a chore of deconstructing the demos and chipping away at these kind of maybe overly dense demos that I'd done, and you whittle away at those until you find the Lucero song underneath, and the guys figure out how to kind of interpret these parts in their own ways. And it was a really short process. We did all that in just we had a couple of days of rehearsal before we went into Sam Phillips recording service, and then we were in there for about 2 weeks. So yeah, it was a much more focused, kind of intense process. Among the Ghosts, we recorded a week here, a week there over the course of a year, and I would go on tour in between and listen to mixes, and then come back and record some more stuff, and go on tour and listen to new mixes. And so that one had more time to kind of just, I don't know, we could ruminate on that one longer. This one got written fairly fast. So yeah, and it was kind of, like I said, it was reverse. It was a whittling away, a chipping away at the songs rather than building them up. So I don't know. I think we got the results we wanted, and we can work either way. But I think if I had my preference, I like the more collaborative way of rehearsing before you go into the studio, rather than just working completely in isolation, which was the case with this one. That gets a little lonely.
Yeah, there's this. I guess like the first single that was released, what I felt was like this like space rock element, and
Yeah,
you know, it's kind of this funny, strange thing where, you know, when you think of like space movies, you think of like the isolation and like these close quarters. And there's like,
it's true.
I don't necessarily think that's like necessarily what you guys were working on, but like there's this aspect of
I love
that
it.
being a part of this.
Yeah. I'd never thought of that before, but that's that's great. I like that comparison. I might use that in some more interviews in the future. Yeah, no, that hadn't crossed my mind, but I like that. There's definitely something, I think, to that. That isolation and that, and the danger as well, kind of being in outer space. There's, you've got a song like "A City on Fire," which those lyrics were written, as we were in the studio. And so at that time, California was on fire with wildfires everywhere. There was the Black Lives Matter movement was going full on. It was an intense time in the United States, for numerous reasons. But yeah, there were protests in the street, and I don't know. Lucero's never really written political songs. There might be some opinions woven into some of these stories over our 20-year career, but we don't. I've just never liked overt preaching or political or social commentary in the songs. It's just not. It's not what I'm shooting for. That's not why I'm writing songs. But in certain situations, you can't help but that stuff just kind of works its way in. And so "A City on Fire" is not any kind of direct commentary on anything, but it does capture that feeling of you're kind of surrounded by flames and the fire is creeping in slowly. And like if you step outside of the spaceship, it's going to be rough out there. That kind of thing. Yeah. It captures that feeling of that moment, I think. And so, yeah, that kind of works in that whole idea as well. And the cover art, which was, I don't know, that was kind of a spur of the moment thing that we decided, just because it had the synthesizer sounds on it. And it did have some of this darker tone. And I don't know, that seemed to, the record cover that we picked with the kind of sci-fi cover, it seemed to match the feeling of the record. So yeah, we decided to just dive in completely and run with that whole thing.
Yeah. Well, there's like that uneasiness. The city built on a tinderbox line is just, obviously it's kind of just perfect for that song, and just kind of like that easiness and that the stress of this past year.
Yeah, stressful for sure. And stressful and intense, harrowing yeah, all that. And yeah, I think this record reflects, the times it was made in a little bit, whether that was intentional or not. I think that anxiety is kind of wrapped up in some of these songs.
Yeah, the anxiety. There you go. Yeah, yeah. You guys returned with to the studio with Matt Rossbang, who produced the last record, and what is that also in relationship to him? How does it change as far as him being a producer, engineer, all that kind of stuff when it comes to obviously having all of these precautions of the year? How does that change with him?
Man, that he made it. Matt Rossbang is he's an old friend of ours, and Sam Phillips recording service is literally like half a block away from our rehearsal space, and so we felt very at home. And Matt Rossbang is very good at making probably whoever he's working with feel right at home. But since we were right at home, we were literally at home, mm-hmm. And then Matt made us feel very at home in the studio. So even with the kind of crazy times and the extra precautions we had to take, it was still a very enjoyable, kind of laid back recording environment. And Matt's very easy to work with. He's been doing this since he was a kid. I think he was 16 when he started working at Sun Studios. And then, yeah, he just learned as much as he could ever since. And he's just kind of a natural. And I don't think he's recorded much synthesizers before. He doesn't do a lot of synthesizer records, but he's such a natural that you wouldn't know it. He was able to mix that stuff in and make it sound very correct. And the whole process was very, yeah, as crazy as the outside world was. Inside the studio, we were just fine. So it was nice.
Yeah. You mentioned obviously, this record being recorded at home essentially. Is it easier to what's your kind of preference? Is it easier to record in the same city that you're living in, or is that destination record kind of?
I think that can work sometimes, maybe for some folks. And maybe at certain points in your career, maybe earlier in your career, it does you good to get out into the world and go different places and isolate in, another town where you don't know anybody. And you can just kind of hunker down and make a record. I like that idea. But for us at this moment in our career and at this time in our lives, just being at home and, having the comforts of home, while you were recording and the ease of, driving a few blocks to your house and then back to the studio. You've got everything right there at your fingertips. And there's a certain, I don't know, it just makes everything easier. And so we really enjoy, I don't know, having Matt Rossbang and somebody of his caliber there in Memphis. Somebody like that to work with is that's important for us, especially because Lucero can be from anywhere else. We're definitely a Memphis band. I'm from Arkansas originally, and I'll always be an Arkansan. But Lucero is a Memphis band. Just the work we've done with folks like Jim Dickinson and the North Mississippi All-Stars, and then working at Ardent Studios and other, kind of very famous places. Famous studios, I don't know, and having folks like Rick Steff and Jim Spake, the saxophone player who makes an appearance on Back in Ohio, having musicians like that around that are willing to play with a band like us. That's tough to find. That doesn't happen just in every town, every city. So, the Memphis has made Lucero what it is, and the fact that we can, record there. It just makes sense for us right now.
Yeah. This episode of New Slang is brought to you by the Blue Light Live here in Lubbock, Texas. Blue Light has undoubtedly been my home away from home over the years, and has played such a vital role not only for my development as a journalist, but obviously it's been one of the foundational pieces for a lot of your favorite songwriters and bands who have made it out of the Lubbock area over the years. And of course, as a music venue, they've played such a pivotal role for a lot of your favorite bands just in general. One of my favorite parts about Blue Light is just how versatile the place can truly be. I've seen it crowded and rowdy on a Saturday night for a rock and roll band, and I've seen it dead still on a Wednesday when a legendary singer-songwriter rolls through town. What you should do is go over to bluelightlubbock.com and check out all the new merch they've added. Hats, t-shirts, both short and long sleeve. They also have hoodies and koozies and just added some sweatshirts that are very much an homage to the college sweatshirt that John Belushi wore in Animal House. And then of course, maybe the crown jewel of their new merch is the Varsity Club style jacket in blue satin. I got one the other day, and yeah, it's just one of my favorite things I own now. And yeah, I don't know, I just love it. Anyway, you can check out all of their new merch over at bluelightlubbock.com. As always, I'll throw a link into the show notes for easy access. Okay, let's get back to the show. You know, I guess like it's one of those things where, you know, certain bands, you can feel where they're from. There's that identity that is just an automatic kind of thing that you feel. I feel like you guys are very much that way with Memphis. When you think of y'all, you think of that, a lot of that blue collar grit, that Southern Gothic aspect, you know, because even though Memphis is in Tennessee, I think like most people when they think of Tennessee, they think of more Nashville. But like there's like this other element of like, I guess with Memphis being, you know, that river town or city, and
it is, yeah,
all that ruralness around from that area.
Yeah, there's a certain, I mean, yeah, Nashville. Yeah, when you think Tennessee, folks think Nashville, but Memphis is kind of the other side of that coin. It's not as rich as Nashville. There's more poverty. It's more, I don't know. It definitely has a more rundown kind of character to it. But it's, you know, it's also kind of the capital of the Delta right there with northern Mississippi and eastern Arkansas and southern Missouri. And it's right there. And which really was, you know, kind of the heart of where modern American music really, you know, came from. So it's kind of right at that intersection, and that's you can still feel that. I think I don't know, the city, for all of its flaws, it still has a very unique character and vibe that you can still kind of soak up when you go down there. So yeah, it's. There's the musicians in the studios and, you know, the kind of concrete things that make it what it is. But there's also, some kind of weird voodoo thing that makes it unique.
Yeah, like it's not like I've really hung around Memphis a lot or anything like that, but it feels like Memphis has more of that. I don't know, like it's easier maybe to like creep into the past, you know, where there's not like. And I'm sure like every major city deals with this, but like it feels like you can find the history there still, the good and the bad and the ugly, where some of the other cities, like, you know, gentrification is just like rampant.
Right. Yeah, that's not as big a problem in Memphis. And so that history, it might be tough to put a finger on, but it's you're just breathing it in the air.
Yeah. So now I don't even know if necessarily you're a fan of this, but you're from Arkansas, as you mentioned. That season 3 of True Detective was set in Arkansas.
Oh yeah, Fayetteville.
Yeah, I'm sure. Did you watch?
I did. I loved it. I was a big fan of season 3. I liked season 2. Everybody hated on season 2, but there were things of season 2 that I thought Colin Farrell did a great job. His final scenes at the end of that season, I thought were heartbreaking and well acted and touching. There was a lot in there I liked. But yeah, season 3 being in Arkansas, and with Mahershala, holy moly, he's one of my favorite actors. He's just, you can't stop, watching him. He's just, and playing, a character in 3 different time periods, an old man, a young man, and kind of a middle-aged man. I just thought he did a great job. So yeah, I was a fan. I'm a fan of all 3 seasons of True Detective.
Yeah, the thing that like I loved about 3 so much was that I guess like with the season 1, they build up the boogeyman, right? Like the evil in this world, and with season 3, you're expecting so much of a return to that, and he
pulls the rug out from under you.
And I think that like that's what is it like what is it like Occam's razor of like usually like the simplest, most normal, like that's
the simplest answer is usually the correct answer.
And while like that mystery is still there, like it's more rooted in just reality and like
it rang true. And yeah, I thought they did a really good job with that. And then that final scene where it's him in Vietnam and he just kind of turns back and looks at the camera before he walks into the jungle. I thought that was a really interesting way to cap everything off. So yeah, that kind of storytelling. I'm another show that doesn't have anything to do with Arkansas, but I've watched a lot of Fargo. I've seen 3 out of the 4 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen Fargo, the TV series?
I've seen the first season. I've not watched.
The first season's good. The second season is excellent. It's a piece of art. The second season is it's hard to top, and it has the same kind of storytelling, similar in some ways to the True Detective stuff. It's kind of more raw in its own way, but yeah, I'm a fan of all that stuff, and then the films that my little brother Jeff makes. He's definitely got that kind of Southern vibe to his storytelling as well. And so, yeah, all that stuff is inspiration for me. Watching those kind of shows and films, it just makes me want to write more songs.
Yeah, well, in relationship to like your brother, obviously like your brother doing these films where you have to like it's a different kind of writing, right? It's a different kind of storytelling because it's if we're just going with time scale, it's a lot longer, and maybe a little bit more broad. I guess like with you, like, writing songs is a little bit more of that vignette style, that more these 5-minute stories.
It's a different medium.
What are the conversations like between y'all as far as, have y'all talked about like I'm sure you have, about like the storytelling ways and how like you're kind of telling the same story but also like different stories.
I love, those are some of my favorite conversations when I get to talk to Jeff and just hear what he's working on and how he's attacking certain problems in his stories that he's trying to tell. And then, or hearing his reactions to some of the songs and some of the stories that I'm telling in my songs. Those are really fun conversations to have. And yeah, I don't know. I've always thought, filmmaking is kind of, I don't know, at least right now to a lot of people, you've got, literature and novels, but then you've got directors and filmmaking. And then somewhere underneath all that, in importance, is rock and roll and music. But I don't know. I think there's something to be argued that trying to tell a story in a 3-minute song that's just as engaging and just as deep and just as just as important as the story that gets told in a 2-hour-long movie. I don't know. I think it's a different process, and it takes a different style of writing for sure. But I think they each have their own merits And I don't think one's necessarily more important than the other, or more artistic than the other. I've thought about this in general. Films, you're tied down to their time frame. You press play on the movie, and then you watch it, and the scenes change according to how the director wants it to go, and the story moves at a certain pace. But with a song is something you listen to, over and over and over again. And yeah, the song kind of lets your life be the movie. And that song is kind of your soundtrack. Going back to kind of what we touched on at the beginning of the conversation. I don't know. And I think there's something more personal for sure. I think about songs and their relationships to the listeners, as opposed to films and the viewers. A song kind of gets inside of you in a way that films can't. And so yeah, I don't know. I love talking with my brother and discussing stories, but and I would love to do more. Like I did the illustrations and animation for some of those lyric videos. Mm-hmm. And I'd like to try my hand at graphic novels one day and writing a longer format story. And so I enjoy talking to Jeff about that style of writing. But yeah, I think it's cool that we kind of each do our own thing.
Yeah, like the song thing, I think, as far as like the stories and songs, and I feel like there's almost like a little bit more flexible. They're a little bit more flexible because like they return to you, at a constant pace because you're just listening to music. And I don't know, like it's one of those things where with songs, there's so many examples of songs where I've listened to it at, 15, at 20, at 25 and so on. And I get something totally different out of it. Now you can do the same thing, obviously, with a book and like a movie or a TV show and all that kind of stuff too. But maybe it's a little bit more easy with a song.
It is, because I think you live with a song more than you live with a book or a movie. You might read a book, 2 or 3 times in your life, 4 or 5 times in your life. You might read a book every year of your life, but still a song, you might listen to that song, hundreds of times. And it, really becomes kind of a part of you in a way that films and books have a tougher time doing.
Yeah, most definitely. I'm going to leave you on this one right here because I think it's going to be, obviously you're a Cormac McCarthy fan. You did the EP about Blood Meridian, and clearly I think I'm going to like just take that off the board because I think that would be the obvious answer. But like, what is that next kind of, what do you think should be like the Cormac McCarthy book that's turned into film next? And would you and your brother do it?
Man, Jeff's got a lot of stuff on his plate right now that is going to be really cool. I know he wrote a screenplay about the same William Morgan story that inspired Back in Ohio. So he's got an excellent screenplay that he wrote, and they're thinking about making that into a film, which I would love to actually see. The finished product of that. And then, I don't know, I always thought, I'm not sure. I don't know what stage everything he's working on is in. I don't know what's for common knowledge and what's not.
Yeah.
But he's got a lot of cool stuff that he's working on right now. One idea that we had, before Lucero really started getting going, I was kind of splitting my time between graphic novels, comic books, and rock and roll bands. And Lucero ended up taking up all my time. But I had a story that was kind of loosely based on my granddad, the granddad from the song The War, who's also in Coffin Nails, and who I kind of was thinking of as the character in the song The Match, which is also on the new record, When You Found Me. Mm-hmm. But this granddad kind of character, he died when I was 12, so that means Jeff was only like 7 years old when Granddad died. So no, we didn't know him very well at all. We only met him a couple of times. But the fact that he'd been an infantryman in World War II and then came back to the farm in the 40s and 50s, and I don't know, he was the only one in the family that really drank and smoked cigarettes, and I don't know, just he was an intriguing character. And so I had kind of worked on this comic book not about him necessarily, but drawing from his life as inspiration. And so but then there was, I don't know, there were a whole lot of other folklore elements in there and mythology elements in there. And kind of bringing all those things and putting them in the fields of Arkansas in the late 40s with this drunk guy who just got home from World War II. I called the comic book From the Land of Opportunity. And so, I don't know, I would love it if we could kind of go back to that story and flesh it out a little bit and make something out of that. I know Jeff's got a few ideas that exist in that world. So that's, that might be a project that I would love it if we could tackle that project one day and actually make something out of it.
Yeah, well, it sounds interesting as hell. So, yeah. But, yeah, it's been really great talking with you today. I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation here.
Yeah, me too. I wish most interviews went as well as this. I thought sometimes my brain just locks up and I don't have anything interesting to say, but I feel like we covered something.
All right, that is it for this one. Thanks for listening. Thanks to Ben for taking some time to talk about this new record, which it is When You Found Me, out this Friday, January 29th. Check it out when it's released. Go stop by our presenting partners over at Desert Door, Hot Damn Coffee, and the Blue Light Live. Make a pit stop over at the New Slang merch store. Check out the Patreon, all that stuff. And yeah, I'll see y'all next week